We're just about to try and start this beast, and my wrists are too precious, so I'm going to let the owner try and start it. We'll see how it goes.
Weird bikes, we love them, and I think you guys do too. The dirt bike world is full of strange and bizarre machines that have turned heads and raised eyebrows throughout history. There's been good ones, there's been bad ones, and there's most certainly been ugly ones. We've been able to track down and feature a fair few of these wonderful oddities on this channel in recent years. But today, in this video, I think we might have just found the weirdest dirt bike of all time. But I'm interested to know what you guys think. This is the 1975 Rokon RT340 MX automatic motocross bike. And trust me, this is a bizarre one. The 1975 Rokon automatic motocross bike. This is probably the most outlandish dirt bike I've ever come across. I mean, just look at this thing. It's got a pull start, mag wheels, disc brakes in 1975. What a machine, what a specimen. In this video, we're going to go through the history of Rokon. I'm going to tell you all about this bike. We've only just scratched the surface of the weirdness here. I mean, this thing's got an engine from a snowmobile, hence the pull start. But that's just the tip of this iceberg of peculiarity. We'll uncover the rest in due course, but first let me explain who and what Rokon are. Rokon are an American motorcycle firm famed for being the oldest and the original producer of all-wheel drive dirt bikes. The rugged two-wheel drive bikes with their massive squishy tyres are mainly utilised for agricultural use and for traversing the American wilderness for hunting, fishing and other outdoor pastimes. The company can trace their roots all the way back to 1958, when an inventor by the name of Charles Fane produced the first prototype bike in Southern California. Charles was a real character and he deserves a whole video just to himself. In 1960, Nethercut Industries bought Fane's designs for the two-wheel drive motorcycle and branded it the Trailbreaker. As an interesting side note, JB Nethercut of Nethercut Industries was a very wealthy cosmetics mogul and the same man who founded the Nethercut collection, which is regarded as one of the world's greatest car collections. Nethercut Industries was a new company started by JB Nethercut and his sons away from their cosmetics business. In 1963, Orla Larson, who was the most successful dealer of the two-wheel drive machines, took control of the Trailbreaker's production from Nethercut Industries and moved the operation across the country from Southern California, first to Vermont and then to New Hampshire. The Rokon name actually comes from Larson, which was also the name of his Vermont ski lodge. Throughout the 60s, the company focused on their all-wheel drive bikes, which were said to be able to climb 60-degree slopes, traverse deep streams and plough through a foot of snow. But with the rise of motocross, enduro and general trail riding in the USA at the start of the 1970s, Rokon's management decided that they also wanted a slice of that pie. A pie that they estimated to be a $1 billion market. After internal market analysis, Rokon concluded that their new conventional off-road machine must be price competitive, perform equal to or better than its competition, and be capable of inspiring riders to request dealers stock the bike. But as Bob Gallagher from RokonWorld.com says, these were pretty lofty goals for a company that had no experience in traditional motorcycle production or sales. Regardless, this was the birth of the RT340 project and the origins of Rokon's involvement in motocross. The RT340 started out as a fairly successful enduro bike, but several other variations soon followed, including the street legal version, which was the very first automatic road bike, a flat tracker version, and of course the motocross version that we have with us here today. And the motocross version also came in several different variations as well. For example, the RT340 MX Cobra was the souped up race version. The Rokon RT340 MX was only ever produced in 1975 and 1976 in very limited numbers. As far as I can deduce, there was only 335 ever made. As we're talking about automatic dirt bikes here, it's worth mentioning that we recently featured an automatic Husqvarna 500cc two-stroke on the channel. The bike that we looked at was from 1984, but Husqvarna had been producing automatic transmission dirt bikes for use in competition from at least the mid-1970s. The first bike to land in the USA was said to arrive in 1975. The Husqvarna automatics were probably more well known and more widely used, but they weren't the first to do it. Automatic Rokon RT340s were being raced at enduro events from at least 1973. The Rokon machines used a nice powerful 335cc Sachs engine that was more commonly used in snowmobiles. And instead of a regular transmission, the RT340 made use of a Salisbury torque converter, which was a variable pitch belt type drive that operated as both the clutch and transmission. It was very wide and very bulky, and it was easy for the belt to get contaminated with dirt and water, which would cause it to slip. Overall, it's a properly weird motor setup, even by 1970s standards. It's said that the engine would put out 30 horsepower at the rear wheel and 37 at the crank. It would engage at 2,800 RPM and would typically run on track between 6,000 and 6,700 RPM. Apparently the bike sounded pretty weird as well, as the engine would run at the same speed pretty much all the time, and the transmission ratio would change depending on the rear wheel speed. But we'll get to hear for ourselves how it sounds at the end of the video. The list of weird features continues, and to help me run through the rest of them, I've got my friend and the guy that found this bike for us, Dave King, on hand to give us some insight. Mr. King, you found us another unicorn here. You definitely don't see these things around very often. I don't think maybe there's that many people searching them out, perhaps. This is the 1975 Rokon RT340 MX. It's a 335cc automatic motocross bike. Now, on the channel recently we featured the automatic Husqvarna from 1984, that's a 500. This predates that. Yeah. What do you know about this bike?
By 10 years.
Yes.
What do I know about this? Not a great deal, apart from that it's like everything a motocross bike shouldn't be. Yeah. The wheels, mag wheels, they soon quickly became outlawed by the FIM. You were not allowed to use them for safety reasons because of cracking.
Didn't know that at all.
It's one of the funkiest motocross bikes I've ever seen in my life.
For starters, literally, it's got a pull start like your lawnmower or your generator. No kick starts around here.
Yeah.
Imagine that. Yeah. Mid-race, stalled it.
I know.
Boom, boom.
I know. Yeah, and the rope snaps.
What do you do
what's
then?
Your option?
Yeah, I don't think you can bump start autos either.
No, you can. Maybe one of the first solo motocross bikes to have double disc brakes.
Yes, I'm pretty sure that is correct. I think by like 8 years.
When we did the RC500 recently, I said that was probably the first. I was wrong by 10 years. This is the first.
Rokon.
Yeah, exactly.
Trailblazers.
The mighty Rokon. And it's like got a huge road bike master cylinder on. It's weird. We couldn't even put this bike on a proper stand because of the underslung exhaust. Yeah. There's nowhere for a proper stand to go. So it's just very weird, very unique.
And looking at those disc brakes, not vented in any way.
Nope.
That's going to be very,
so if it was anything
nice.
Other than dead dry,
Yeah.
which, as we all know, motocross is generally wet or very wet, yeah, they're not going to work very well. Some real innovations in the early development of motocross again, and this is another important part of the history of our sport.
There was a reason that they needed to put disc brakes on this bike, because obviously it's an automatic. When you throttle off, there's no engine braking, you're just freewheeling. And if you're going down a hill and you throttle off and you're speeding up, you're going to want some good brakes. Yeah. So that's where the reason why I put the discs on there. Look how weird that is actually. The brake here is the wrong way round.
Wrong way round, yeah.
It's reversed. The brake pedal is the wrong way round. Obviously because they've not got a lot of space to play with down there. As you can imagine, riding the RT340 was an experience. Jody Weisel of Motocross Action said that the bike was fast, but very heavy at 275 pounds. And of course, those disc brakes were a lot sharper than anything else back in the day, so they could quite easily catch out an unsuspecting test rider. As I mentioned earlier, the note of the engine never really differed, so it was hard to know if you broke traction because the sound of the engine just wouldn't change. But this was fairly rare, as the bike would normally be putting down just the right amount of power. I found a great Cycle World review from 1975 that explained exactly how the torque converter worked. I'll include links in the description to that article and all of the other material that helped me in my research for this video. In that feature, Cycle World were reviewing the 1975 Enduro version, but regardless, it's safe to say they were thoroughly impressed. The only complaints that their test team really had was that the master cylinder for the rear brake failed on occasion, and they also said that the Beatar suspension from Spain didn't have as much travel as they would have liked and was just way too stiff. Aside from that, the pain of having the big bulky torque drive down on the left was worth having the benefit of not worrying what gear you needed to be in on a tough enduro trail. The Sachs motor from West Germany was plenty powerful enough for Cycle World, and they said that the 36mm Mikuni carb mixed the air and fuel perfectly throughout the rev range, and they gave the brakes an A+ score. Power delivery was said to be incredibly smooth and put to the ground very efficiently. You can see why this bike would have been an awesome enduro machine. Taming it for the motocross track, however, would take some doing, but we'll have a cool story about that in a bit. So as you guys know, I love weird bikes, but you'd be forgiven for not knowing exactly what oils or lubricants you need for these weird and bizarre machines. Luckily for us, our friends at Putoline are on hand to help out. Putoline have all the oils, lubricants, cleaning products, and everything else you need for your dirt bike. And if you go onto their website and type your bike model into the search bar, they'll bring up all of the products that they recommend you need for your machine. As always, a massive thank you goes to Putoline for sponsoring the channel and helping us to make videos like this one and track down the weirdest bikes in the world. This motor here, like I said, it's a 335cc motor. It's a Sachs motor, I believe, from a snowmobile.
Is that right? Yeah, that was new. But we said this looks like the type of bike that you would have probably gone into a John Deere store where you'd buy a tractor and they had a motocross bike for sale as well.
Yeah, very agricultural.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just look at the transmission there. That is, I believe,
bulky. I
believe it is bulky, but I think the company is a Salisbury.
The Harley Davidson that we recently featured had a big metal leather strap holding the tank down. This has just got a great big bolt.
Yeah, don't get too far forward on this one. You don't want that going anywhere where it shouldn't. This
tiny little lever here, obviously, is not a clutch, it's a decompressor.
So to start you're supposed to hold that in and then...
That's exactly, or you get your best mate to hold that side. Size of the bike, quite low to the ground. I would imagine a very easy bike to paddle around. Quite a long wheelbase for this era bike. In that, you know, mid-70s era, you're getting the plastic fenders, and it's getting to be more of a modern looking motocross bike. It's just an extremely agricultural bike, but I suspect if you were out in the middle of the forest somewhere, up on a mountain, this would be the bike that would get you home.
Yeah, for sure. So as you can see, the RT340 MX really was a weird machine. Totally unconventional in the world of motocross. In 1978, Rokon were broke, and they went into receivership. But luckily for fans of the two-wheel drive brand, the company was revived in 1981 by Robert Corpy and J. Richard Niemela. Their focus would once again be solely on the two-wheel drive bikes. The RT range was abandoned and left to be remembered as a quirky part of motocross history. Much like their moto tractor machines, Rokon continued to plough on through the years, and they are still producing bikes to this day. The modern range and the modern bikes themselves remain very similar to their forefathers from the 1960s and 1970s. Despite that hiccup at the end of the 1970s, you'd have to say that Rokon are a rare example of an American motorcycling success story. Their longevity alone is enough to convince me of that. American motocross bikes have really fascinated me lately, and we've been fortunate enough to feature a few of them on the channel in the past year. That being said, I do feel like I'm missing one big feather from my American MX cap. I'd love to have a ride on an American-made ATK from the 1980s or the 1990s. So if you've got one of those hidden in your garage and you'd like to see it featured on the channel, please feel free to drop me a message on Instagram at 1MinuteMoto. I'd also love to have a ride on a Rokon as well, be it one of the RT340s like this one, or one of the two-wheel drive bikes from any era. Understandably, the owner of this prime example of a Rokon RT340 wasn't too keen for us to take it for a rip. After all, it did take some doing to track one down and get it back to the UK. And now Dave, tell us about the story of this bike, how you've come across it, how we've got it on the channel here today. Where's this from? Because I don't think these were like in the UK in 1975.
I would be very surprised if these were ever offered for sale in the UK. I don't remember them. If they were totally off the radar.
I don't think many of these were made. I think less than 400, I think, of these were made.
So this was sourced in Florida and has been restored with help of the original Rokon company.
I would be interested to know if we could find out more history about this being from Florida, because I did find some racing history of this bike. It was raced, and there was one guy called Rokon Don from Florida that won a race on a Rokon Automatic.
No way.
Don't know if it's this one.
Could be.
It could be.
Could be the only race that he ever won.
I'm pretty sure that it's probably the only race that was won on one of these, but Rokon Don, if you're still around and you recognise this bike,
get in contact.
Get in touch. That'd be an awesome addition to this story.
Yeah.
Rokon Don Kadowski certainly put Rokon on the map in the motocross world. But the New Hampshire-based firm had already been making waves in the enduro scene way before Don ever threw his leg over the RT340. In that same Cycle World article as before, they talked about how the RT340 had performed very well in the ISDT. In the previous 2 years, they said that the bike had a 100% finish record and that Rokon mounted races had earned a litany of medals. The 1975 ISDT held on the Isle of Man was a little more unsuccessful for Rokon though, with several DNFs. Nevertheless, American Jim Hollander managed to earn himself a bronze medal riding an RT340 on the infamous island. Back to Rokon Don. Don Kadowski was a talented Floridian who was famed for performing very well at the renowned AMA Florida Winter Series races. Don first came across Rokons when the shop that he raced for got hold of some bikes from a rider who didn't want to race them anymore. They asked Don if he wanted to give the Rokons a try at a local race in Ocala, Florida. To everyone's surprise, Don Kadowski won the first Open Expert Moto of the day on board a Rokon. Unfortunately, they couldn't get the bike fired into life for race 2, so he missed that moto. But nevertheless, that was the start of the relationship between Rokon and Don. When asked why he chose to ride the strangest bike of them all, Don said that he always liked fighting adversity. Don became the factory Rokon racer in 1975, but apparently they only paid him in bikes, parts and gas. He battled Tony DiStefano throughout the 1975 Florida Winter AMA Series, winning the overall at St. Petersburg in the Open Pro class and eventually finishing second overall behind DiStefano in the series. After that, the nickname Rokon Don was solidified forevermore. Well, almost anyway. Don actually raced a few Supercross events for Rokon as well, including the Daytona SX where he had 3 DNFs, and the round at the Houston Astrodome where he famously had a run-in with Jimmy Weinert. And after that incident, his nickname was changed to Killer Kedalski. As well as that, Don also raced the Rokon in the 500cc Nationals that year until the bike got protested. According to the rulebook, there was a minimum displacement in the class of 349cc. So the Rokon was 9cc under. So after that race, Don drove straight to the Rokon HQ and they modified the cylinder. But Don said that the bike never quite performed the same after that. In reality, it seems as though Rokon never really took motocross racing that seriously. Not like Harley Davidson did with their full factory effort, as short-lived as it was. But with the money troubles that must have been causing the company some serious worries at the time, it's completely understandable that they just couldn't afford to go full bore on the racing front. As we know, the bike wasn't destined to become a major success. But despite its downfall, I for one am very happy that the RT340 exists. It's got to be one of, if not the quirkiest dirt bike ever made, and the tapestry of motocross history is made even more colourful because of it. Now, let's rip that cord and hear the bike come to life.
Ready?
Once again, an awesome piece of motocross history that you've managed to unearth for us here today, Dave. Thanks once again. Keep them coming, and guys, send us your suggestions. We've had some comments to look for Rokons. I'd like to try a Rokon 2-wheel drive as well. If anyone's got one of those, let us know. As always, Dave, thank you very much, mate.
Thank you.
What a find.